Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Scott Jeske, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 7 favorite things about the Sony FX3. Let's get into it. By the way, these are my top 7 favorite things about the camera, but not necessarily in the order in which they are listed. However, I will start with my number 1 favorite thing about this camera, which is the image quality. And what I mean by that is really the final look that I get out of the image and the flexibility, fidelity, and quality of the log footage that I'm working with. Now, at the time that I got the A7 III, there weren't really a ton of options out there. Now it's just absolutely staggering how many cameras just are mind-blowingly beautiful in their image quality. Putting it simply, what do I love about the image quality in this camera? Well, in the past, I wasn't such a big fan of SLOG 3 because you were working with 8-bit 420 codecs. Now, as we all know, with the introduction of the Sony A7S III, which is internally pretty much the same camera as the Sony FX3, we've now been offered internal 10-bit 422 in multiple codecs, as well as external ProRes RAW, as well as multiple flavors of ProRes RAW 422. Now, is this Apple ProRes 444XQ or uncompressed RAW? No, and thank God it isn't. That's one of the things that I love so much about this camera, is that you get this high quality, flexible internal codecs that offer all the promises of SLOG 3. Now you get all the dynamic range of SLOG 3, but you also get quality color science, and you get all the flexibility and fidelity that we were all hoping for years ago. And I'm also a subscriber to cinematographer Steve Yedlin's philosophy that a camera is a data collection device, and we ascribe too much of what we would call the photographic look to each camera and their color science. If a camera is collecting more or less raw data, which is, high quality log footage that doesn't really have a photographic look, the fact that we can now create beautiful LUTs or apply beautiful LUTs and cinematic grades that don't break the image apart, I would argue that now there's no limit to what photographic look we can craft from camera to camera. As long as that quality and that fidelity is there, the sky's the limit. And that's something that I love so much about this camera, is that in the right hands you can get an image that is on par with an Arri Alexa or a Red or what have you. And that's a perfect segue to my number 2 favorite thing about this camera, which is the size and the form factor. Now, I know everybody says the Sony FX3 is essentially the A7S III in a different body, and that's more or less true, but I love the body of this camera. It's absolutely beautiful to look at, it's beautiful to hold and to feel, and this camera inspires me. I love that it has mounting points all over the body. I love that it comes with a top handle. I just love the way this camera looks and feels, and the fact that you can pull out a camera that's labeled on the top cinema camera, and on a client shoot I can say, yeah, it's small, but this is a legit cinema camera. They won't ask questions, so the optics are there, but also it's this tiny little camera that I can take to the beach, that I can do a run and gun feature film or a short film, but I could also do a narrative film with a crew and just have all the more durability and flexibility with such a small form factor. This camera is so inspiring for a filmmaker because I don't have to kit it out and rig it out. I have that option, but on a surface level, it's small. I can grab it by the top handle, hit record, flip the screen, and get a beautiful image right out of camera. And I absolutely love that. It means I can create more, create faster, and get it out to you guys much quicker. So a quick one, number 3, and again, not necessarily in that order. I love the tally lights on this camera. You've got one on the screen, you've got one on the back, you've got one on the front. It's beautiful in its presentation. It makes the camera feel inspiring. And again, some of these things are emotional things for me, but we're artists. We like to be inspired. We like our surroundings and our trappings and our tools to inspire us and to inspire us to continue to use them. But it reminds me, of course, that the camera is rolling. How often have we hit record, then gone back to the camera and we haven't been recording the whole time because we didn't see the tiny little red dot? That's the worst. We've all been there. I love these tally lights. Next, I love that this camera came with this top handle with the XLR inputs. I know there are some gripes about sort of the size of the top handle and the grip of it, and I feel the same way. It's a little bit awkward in that where your hand goes is a little too short. It's not a big deal, you can work around it, but I just got myself a metal small rig adjustment. It's got beautiful grooves for your fingers. It screws on, it's nice and snug, and it adds a little bit of weight to the camera. I love it, feels great, and again, it adds to that inspiration. The other practical aspect of this top handle and the XLR inputs is not only do you have an 1/8 inch on the body, which is very convenient if you're not using the top handle, you've got an 1/8 inch on the XLR top handle, and then you've got 2 XLR inputs. That's awesome. So many options. Love the top handle, love the XLRs. The handle itself is not perfect, but you can buy a $50 attachment from Small Rig and you're good to go. This one's a 2-for-1, but I love the internal codecs and I love the flip out screen. One thing that drove me nuts with my A7 III was always having to use a Ninja V for doing videos like this or for doing client work. You know, for client work I would use it anyway, but when I want to just get out the camera and film something or record something, or maybe you do vlogging, having the flip out screen, it's quick, it's low profile, you don't need bulky batteries on your monitor, you don't need to be dealing with HDMIs. I love that. So I love the flip out screen. And then the internal codecs, not having to, again, output to an external recorder. I'm really loving the H.265 option because I have a Mac Mini. I know it runs a little slower for people, but in Final Cut Pro on a Mac Mini with the M1 ARM processor, it's smooth as butter, and I'm absolutely loving that. I'm loving the high quality with the smaller file size. So internal codecs, flip screen, love it, love it, love it. Number 6, I love the dual ISO in this camera. I love that you've got ISO 640, which is closer to that 500 to 800 ISO range of something like an Arri Alexa. It's low enough that it's nice and clean, but it's also high enough that you can get away with it in a broad range of situations and get the maximum dynamic range out of it. Now, in the past, I was never a big fan of high ISOs. I've always been a bigger fan of using lighting, and some of that's just my narrative film background. In the past, I didn't do a lot of run and gun stuff or filmmaking in nature, those kinds of things, so I didn't use higher ISOs, and they just didn't really look good, frankly. But having the secondary base ISO of 128,000, absolutely amazing, especially if you're doing situations like sunset or dusk. You know, it might bring the highlights up quite a bit, but you can always bring them down because you have so much flexibility and latitude with SLOG 3. I recently did a video where I was able to capture that time of day, and it was just outstandingly clean and beautiful. I was able to overexpose to get maximum dynamic range and then bring it down in post, and it was just clean and beautiful. So dual ISO, absolutely loving it. Okay, number 7, last but not least, I love having autofocus on this camera. Again, this is something that was great even on the A7 III. I'm sure it's amazing on the A7 IV and the A7S III. There were times where I was tempted to get a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, but the biggest drawback to me is the autofocus. That's a game changer for me, especially when you're doing run and gun, small crews. In fact, my last narrative short film, I shot completely autofocus on the A7S III. The film should have been a 4-day shoot, and we did it in 2, and it just wouldn't have been possible without that. I didn't have a focus pooler on set. It was just me pretty much crewing. I'm already thinking about when the time comes to make my first feature, why the heck not make it on this? I can get an image that looks comparable to an Arri Alexa. I've got autofocus so I can do gimbal work, really save time on set. And this camera is just durable and flexible. You can kit it out and build it out like a Blackmagic Pocket camera, but you can also strip it down and keep it really durable and simple, especially if you need to do guerrilla or low profile shooting. So there you have it. Those are my top 7 favorite things about the Sony FX3. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this video if you liked it or thought it was good information. Again, these are just my opinions. You can get more technical advice from Gerald Undone or Philip Bloom. And if you be so inclined, please click the bell so you can be notified of future videos. As you've noticed, if you follow the channel, I'm creating more and more content, and I wouldn't want you to miss the next one. So thank you so much. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.